My husband and his mother secretly tagged every penny I spent. The betrayal I uncovered cost them everything. It started with a whisper. A faint digital whisper from the banking app on my phone that screamed of a betrayal so profound, it would unravel the very fabric of my 10-year marriage. The notification was bland, routine. Transaction alert. $22.17 at Been There, Done That, Cafe. But beneath it, in a cold, clinical font that felt like a slap, was a new line. Category: Personal Indulgence. Monthly lifestyle. Budget remaining: $227.83. The air left my lungs. Personal indulgence? A budget? For my coffee? My fingers, suddenly clumsy and cold, fumbled with the phone. I opened the app, the familiar interface now feeling like a foreign crime scene. Our joint account, the account that held my salary, his salary, our life, had been transformed. Every transaction was now color-coded, tagged, and categorized like a specimen in a lab. Groceries, green. Utilities, blue. Household, yellow. And then, glaring at me in a vicious, accusatory shade of red, lifestyle, $250 per MO. A monthly allowance. A cap. A limit. My own husband, the man I'd built a decade with, had secretly, unilaterally, decided to put a financial leash on me. And he'd done it without a single conversation. Liam and I, we were a story everyone loved. We met as undergraduates at Columbia, two idealistic kids crashing the same protest against tuition hikes. He was the fiery debater with a heart of gold, quoting Marx and Keynes. I was the pragmatic organizer, the one who knew how to get the permits and work the megaphone. Our first kiss was behind a police barricade, our shared dreams painted on placards. After graduation, I channeled that energy into the nonprofit world, climbing the ranks until I was running a major international aid organization, my work taking me to disaster zones and refugee camps. Liam went the corporate route, becoming a rising star at a sleek ESG, environmental, social and governance, investment firm. He made more money, sure, especially after his last promotion to VP. But it never ever mattered. We were partners. Comrades. We pooled our resources into our joint account without a second thought, bought a sun-drenched loft in Dumbo with a view of the Brooklyn Bridge, and filled it with the smell of old books, fresh paint from my weekend projects, and his elaborate vegan cooking. We talked about kids, about adopting, about changing the world one tiny corner at a time. We were a team. The crack in our foundation appeared almost imperceptibly at first. It began 8 months ago after Liam's cousin Ben went through a cataclysmic divorce. Ben's wife, Isabella, a fiercely talented sculptor who had put her career on hold to raise their 3 children, had allegedly left him in a blaze of glory. The story we received, filtered through Ben's heartbreak and the family's collective outrage, was a masterpiece of villainy. Isabella, they claimed, had been embezzling from their home renovation fund for years, hired a pit bull of a lawyer and systematically dismantled Ben's life. She got the sprawling Westchester home, a staggering amount of alimony and child support, and sole custody was framed not as a parenting decision but as the ultimate financial power play. Liam was devastated. Ben was more than a cousin. He was his hero, his moral compass. Liam would lie awake for hours, his body rigid beside me in the dark. "How do you ever truly know someone's heart, Maya?" he'd whisper, his voice ragged. Ben would have laid down in traffic for her. He trusted her with his entire world. And she just commodified it. I tried to be the voice of reason, to soothe the paranoia I saw blooming in him. "Liam, my love, we're only hearing one side. A marriage is a universe of its own. Maybe there were cracks we never saw. Maybe she felt trapped, unheard." He'd cut me off, his tone hardening. "It always starts with the money, Maya. The resentment, the entitlement. It always comes back to the money." It was around this time that my professional life offered a dazzling opportunity. A major philanthropic foundation offered me the role of Director of Global Initiatives. It was my dream job, a chance to shape humanitarian policy on a world stage. It came with a modest pay bump, but its real currency was impact. And yes, it required travel. Significant travel. Trips to Geneva for UN meetings, to Nairobi for field assessments, to Copenhagen for donor summits. I was euphoric. I planned a special dinner, cooked his favorite mushroom risotto, opened a bottle of Burlo we'd been saving. When I told him, his face didn't light up. It closed down. Travel? He said, setting his wine glass down with a precise click. How frequent? How long? It varies, I said, my excitement faltering. Maybe 5 or 6 trips a year. Some for a week, maybe 2 for longer conferences. Liam, this is it. This is everything I've worked for. We'll need to run a cost-benefit analysis, he said, his voice taking on the flat, analytical tone he used in boardrooms. The per diems, the tax implications, the lost household productivity while you're gone. We need to see if the numbers make sense. I laughed, a nervous, bewildered sound. A cost-benefit analysis? For my career? Liam, this isn't one of your investment portfolios. This is my life's work. Everything is a portfolio, Maya, he replied, his eyes not meeting mine. Everything has an asset value and a liability risk. We have to be smart. The next day the oracle spoke. His mother, Diana, called me. Diana was a retired federal judge, a woman whose intellect was a scalpel and whose love was a conditional contract, perpetually under review. She had always viewed my career in humanitarian aid as a noble hobby, a charming but ultimately frivolous pursuit compared to the serious business of high finance that her son was engaged in. Why? Liam informs me you're considering a position that involves significant international peregrination, she began, her voice a dry, legalistic document. It's not peregrination, Diana. It's a directorship. It's a huge step up. A step up into frequent flyer lounges and away from your marital home. Benjamin's situation has created a great deal of familial anxiety. This is not the time for unilateral career decisions that introduce instability. Isabella's business trips were a key part of her narrative, you'll recall. I was stunned into silence for a moment. I am not Isabella. This is a legitimate, demanding job offer. A job that seems to prioritize global influence over domestic responsibility. I'm merely advising prudence. Liam is in a vulnerable state. The last thing he needs is the financial and emotional uncertainty of a wife with a newly peripatetic lifestyle and access to the joint accounts. The conversation with Liam that night was a descent into a bizarre, alternate reality. He didn't defend me, he defended her logic. She's not being adversarial, Maya. She's being strategic. She's seen the forensic accounting of divorce. She knows how these narratives are constructed. We need to build a defensive architecture. Defensive architecture? Against me. My voice was rising, edged with hysteria. For us, he insisted. For our future. We need clear, defined, mutually agreed-upon parameters for discretionary spending. A budget. For both of us. It sounded almost reasonable, sanitized by his corporate jargon. Parameters. Mutually agreed upon. I was naive. I agreed, thinking we would sit down together with a spreadsheet and a bottle of wine and talk about our financial goals like the partners I thought we were. I was wrong. A week later, the new banking features went live without a word from him. My parameter was a paltry $250 a month for anything that wasn't a pre-approved essential. His I would later learn had no such limit. When I finally confronted him, he was prepared, armed with talking points. It's not a restriction, Maya, he said, his voice calm, eerily devoid of the passion I'd fallen in love with. It's a fiscal accountability framework. My income represents the majority of this marital asset pool. Risk mitigation is not personal, it's prudent. This system provides unparalleled transparency and prevents any future financial ambiguities. The words were like ice water. Asset pool. Risk mitigation. Fiscal accountability. My husband was gone, replaced by a risk-averse CFO who saw his wife as a potential liability. The following 3 months were a slow, suffocating erosion of my autonomy and self-respect. The $250 wasn't just money, it was a meter on my existence. A coffee with a grieving friend? Personal indulgence. Buying a new novel? Personal indulgence. A spontaneous donation to a hurricane relief fund? Charity. A category he'd secretly capped at $75 a month. Our Sunday mornings, once spent reading the paper and listening to jazz, were now dedicated to his financial review. He'd sit with his tablet, scrolling through the tagged transactions, his brow furrowed. $52.34 at CVS? That seems excessive. Categorization, personal care. It was tampons, Liam. And the good conditioner because my hair is falling out from stress. Your mother's stress. Consumables are a recurring cost. Bulk purchasing at Costco is 34% more efficient. My mother gets her. I don't care what your mother gets. I'd snap, my patience shattering. He'd look at me with that same disappointed, analytical gaze. This defensive posture isn't productive, Maya. We're just optimizing. I started to hide. I became a ghost in my own financial life. I'd buy groceries and sneak a bottle of wine into the cart, paying for it with cash from the $50 I'd immediately withdraw the moment my allowance reset. The transaction blandly labeled ATM cash on the statement. I was lying to my husband about a $15 bottle of Pinot Noir. The shame was a constant cold stone in my stomach. The breaking point was my oldest friend Anya's 40th birthday. A group of us had planned a celebratory dinner at a beloved, slightly pricey Ethiopian restaurant. The day before, with a sinking feeling of dread, I checked the app. I had $18.50 left in my lifestyle budget. I couldn't even cover my share of the meal, let alone contribute to Anya's gift. Humiliation burning my cheeks, I approached Liam. I need to use the joint account for Anya's birthday dinner tomorrow. It's a set menu, it's $95 a person. Social dining falls under lifestyle, Maya. You know the protocol. It's her 40th. It's a milestone. It's not a protocol, it's my best friend. The framework doesn't have a line item for sentimental exceptions. Proper planning would have involved allocating funds from previous month's surplus. I saw red. Surplus? What surplus, Liam? This isn't a framework. It's a straitjacket. I make $90,000 a year. That is my money in that account too. It's our money, he corrected, his voice chillingly calm. And this is the system we are using to manage it. To protect our shared future. We never agreed. You and your mother designed this prison and sentenced me to it without a trial. He looked at me then, not with anger, but with a profound clinical disappointment that shattered my soul. This reaction is telling. This sense of entitlement, this refusal to be fiscally disciplined, it's exactly the pattern Isabella exhibited in the beginning. That was it. The final, devastating truth. He wasn't my partner. He was my warden and I was his inmate, my every move compared to the ghost of his cousin's ex-wife. The partnership was dead. The next day, while he was at a shareholder meeting, I did something that felt both treasonous and necessary. I called our bank's security department. My hands were shaking. I spun a story about suspecting fraudulent activity and needing a full audit trail of all administrative users and login histories for our joint account. After an hour of security verification, they emailed it to me. The log was a timeline of my betrayal. There was a second administrator on the account, added 3 months prior. The username was Diana Strategic Advising LC. It had accessed our account dozens of times, often minutes after Liam's own logins. A cold, hard web search confirmed it. Diana Strategic Advising LC was his mother's freelance financial consultancy. She wasn't just whispering advice in his ear. She had her own keys to our financial home. She had full real-time administrative access to see every single thing I bought. My tampons, my coffee, my hidden bottle of wine. She was watching, judging, and undoubtedly reporting back to her son. They were a team. I was the subject of their case study. The violation was so complete, so absolute, it left me numb. There was no anger left, only a vast, desolate emptiness. I didn't confront him. There were no words left. Instead, I called Anya. I told her everything, my voice a flat, broken monotone. She listened, and when I finished, there was a steel in her voice I'd never heard before. Get out. Today. I'm sending a car. You're staying with me. That Saturday, while Liam was at a charity golf tournament with Ben, I moved out. I took my clothes, my books, my grandmother's vase. I left my key on his meticulously organized desk. Next to it, I placed a single post-it note. It read, I was never an asset in your portfolio. I was your wife. Your mother's login is Diana Strategic Advising LC. I hope the data was valuable. The fallout was a spectacle of denial and fury. He called relentlessly. He showed up at Anya's doorstep, first pleading, then raging, then begging again. He said I was irrational, that I was destroying a decade over a simple budgeting tool. He said his mother was a valued financial advisor who was only trying to help optimize our partnership. He promised to remove the categories, to give me carte blanche to go to counseling. But the bridge was ash. The trust had been not just broken but monetized, categorized, and sold to his mother. I retained a lawyer, a brilliant, ruthless woman named Sharon who specialized in divorcing women from financially controlling men. The divorce proceedings were a surreal echo of my marriage. All cold numbers and strategic moves. No children. 2 stable incomes. We sold the Dumbo loft. His lawyer, undoubtedly coached by Diana, tried to argue for an unequal split of our assets, presenting my secret cash withdrawals as evidence of financial misconduct and lack of transparency. Sharon eviscerated them, presenting my 6-figure salary and a decade of responsible financial partnership before the framework was imposed. She called it for what it was, financial abuse and covert surveillance. In the end, I got my full half. I bought a light-filled pre-war apartment in Park Slope. I took the directorship. My first trip to Geneva was booked and paid for from my own, singular, untagged, uncategorized bank account. I heard through mutual friends that Liam and Diana are closer than ever. They apparently have a perfectly optimized, transparently managed relationship. I sometimes wonder if he ever sees the tragic, brutal irony. He was so terrified of becoming his cousin, of being blindsided by a betrayal, that he became the architect of his own. He was so focused on protecting his assets from his wife that he failed to protect his marriage from his mother. He wasn't risk-averse. He was love-averse. And in the end, his prized portfolio lost its most valuable asset, us.